Ding dong, a lang, a lang, a lang. Boom, ba-do, 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 ba-do. Oh, life could be a dream. You up in paradise.
Welcome on in, everybody. Thanks for clicking. This is the Fantasy Football Gods podcast. I am Ian Stoner. With me today for a special news topic, Caden Green and Blake Steinbeck.
Beautiful man.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Looking very, very good, growing out the facial hair. I enjoy it.
Oh yeah, no shave during this quarantine.
Amen. Now we're on to the Brandin Cooks trade. Those of you who don't know, Brandin Cooks was traded to the Houston Texans for second-round pick, 57 overall in the draft. He leaves a $21 million dead cap fine on the Rams. It is the most of a wide receiver since Super Bowl era. How do we feel about Brandin Cooks going to the Texans? Well, hold on. Let's look at Brandin Cook first. So he played 14 games, 72 targets for a whopping, what's that? Come on, Google, work with me. Google sucks. 58 catches for 583 yards on 2 touchdowns, putting him at the wide receiver 3 range.
Was he hurt again last year?
Yeah.
So this is the biggest thing for me personally. He had his 4th and 5th concussion last year in a 6-year career.
Yeah.
So the Texans traded DeAndre Hopkins for a second-round pick, and then essentially traded a slightly worse second-round pick for a guy who's on his 5th concussion and has statistically his worst year last year.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that office right now.
I'm not really sure what Bill O'Brien's thinking right now, but at least Brandin Cooks is usable in fantasy. I will say right now, because I know it will change, so I can confidently say it. If you are drafting right now, for God's sake, why are you drafting right now? But the biggest thing, take Brandin Cooks. He is a 13th round ADP right now. It's totally worth it. It's going to be the starting wide receiver on that team, especially if Will Fuller gets hurt.
Oh, Will Fuller's going to be huge now. I didn't even think about that guy.
Yeah.
He's got some value.
So, there's such a ripple effect on these teams from Brandin Cooks. It's not just Brandin Cooks' overall value, or even just Jared Goff and Deshaun Watson's value. There are players who are being affected by this that we're not talking about. So I just want to lead in by saying, Blake, is there a player that you're excited for in fantasy you think is doing better now that Brandin Cooks is on the Houston Texans?
Yeah, I really like Robert Woods.
Robert Woods.
Because I drafted him probably 2 to 3 years ago when he was probably in his prime. And then Brandin Cooks got there and it really devalued him. But he was still doing all right. And then last year, I just didn't really see the production out of him. Because I was in a 12-man league and I just didn't really see it out of him. And Brandin Cooks really took away a lot of his receptions, touchdowns, and targets. So now that he's gone, I could really see his value going up in both fantasy and the offense in general.
All right. I agree with what you're saying. Woods almost 1,150 yards last year with Brandin Cooks there, so let's see what he can do without.
Wow.
I know, very productive
I didn't know
year given
really
a very crowded wide receiver core.
Yeah, definitely.
Caden, you have another person specifically on the Rams you want to talk about.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp. I think he's going to have even more production in my eyes. I mean, you're losing another wide receiver. It's more the merrier to him, if not Gerald Everett as well. Gerald Everett's still there, correct?
Yes, but I believe Tyler Higbee is the starter.
Right. They both of those guys actually had a decent amount towards the end of the season. They both did some great numbers. So I'm excited for both those guys, actually.
I agree. Cooper Kupp, by the way, a whopping 134 targets on the year.
Sheesh.
And a very sizable 94 catches for 1,161 yards. Me personally, looking at the Rams, I think Tyler Higbee is the biggest one to gain from this. Tyler Higbee is going to be that guy in the red zone. I understand that there isn't a deep threat necessarily. You have to look at people like Josh Reynolds to fill that role.
Yeah.
However, I think Higbee had such a great start at the end of the season. He's already kind of low on draft boards. 734 yards, about 15 starts. Pretty good. I didn't even know this until I looked it up. 90 targets for Tyler Higbee. That
Wow.
is an
That's nuts.
insane amount when you think
That
about it.
is a lot.
70 catches for 3 touchdowns. I won't get Tyler Higbee in draft so long as nothing changes in this Rams offense. While we have looked at the Rams for a gain, I think we can kind of say confidently, and I think, Blake, you want to talk about it, the Rams offense might be hurting from this loss.
Yeah, I think the Rams offense in general, from like a winning perspective, is gonna hurt because I feel like Brandon Cooks being there, it allows like Cooper Kupp to get more targets because they're gonna be looking at 3 because they had probably the best wide receiver core for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And
Definitely.
when you have that, the defense has to focus on each receiver. And I feel like now that Brandon Cooks is gone, they're going to focus more on Cooper Kupp now and Robert Woods, which will open up more receivers. But I feel like I'm not going to say Cooper Kupp's going to go down, but I feel like when a good receiver leaves, it has the defense to focus more attention on their star receivers rather than focus more on their 2-star receivers. So
So
that
you're
would,
saying it's kind of like Antonio Brown was with Juju.
yeah, and
Back
like
when they both were
DeAndre
on the
Hopkins
Steelers.
and Will Fuller, something like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
those 2-star players get more receptions based because they're shadowed by that really good player on the team.
Another thing is, do you guys think Cooper Kupp will get more than 10 touchdowns again? Like, that's a lot of touchdowns for a wide receiver, but do you think he'll
Yeah,
get 10 touchdowns again like that? Or is that just,
I think it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I honestly don't think he will.
I don't know either. That's a lot. I don't know.
I think it really comes down to how this run game affects. Now, Todd Gurley was able to punch in the ball, but Jared Goff was really the one, even in that red zone area, throwing the ball, getting the touchdowns. I understand that Brandon Cooks only had 2 touchdowns that were left. However, I think one of these wide receivers is going to see a big spike in overall total numbers. I just think efficiency and touchdown wise, I don't think they will be. And I think we kind of already assumed that, and I think that's why we're saying they're higher up on draft boards, even though we might see a regression in some categories. I think the spread of the touchdowns might decrease. I think maybe one player will have a lot of touchdowns. I don't know if it's going to be Kupp or if Kupp's going to be like Julio Jones in the red zone, just be completely smothered, leaving Calvin Ridley open, leaving Hooper open, leaving whoever open just to snag those touchdowns.
Yeah.
I'm kind of worried about this Texans offense, and the main person I'm worried about is someone who I thought finally was going to get a chance. I was kind of looking at on draft boards. I was hoping for training camp. It's Keke Coutee. He just cannot get a break. I feel so bad for the guy. After his second year, he's only played in 15 games. It's very sad to look at. 250 yards in 6 games as a wide receiver 3 is a pretty good number in my opinion. However, he just had that starting role there. You know, he had that wide receiver 3 role now that Kenny Stills is there. He had that in the bag. And now Brandon Cooks came in. And Brandon Cooks can play the slot too, so it really just totally takes away from him. I think I was even looking at him as one of those late round steals, a Devin Singletary of last year, a Mark Andrews of last year. But this is just it's such a hard position to be in. Only 36 targets to his name. It wasn't a lot of volume, but I can confidently say that this guy is off my draft board at the moment, and I'm gonna have to look elsewhere if I want that steal and wide receiver.
Yeah. Considering, would you consider maybe picking him up because of Brandon Cook's health issues, possibly, or would you just say 100% just do not draft him?
The problem is that I understand the health issues of Brandon Cooks, but coming into this Texans receiving core, he's arguably the healthiest of these wide receivers. Will
Right.
Fuller has had massive season-ending injuries back-to-back years. Keke Coutee, as I just said, has missed over half his games so far in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Stills is pretty healthy. I think he's healthier than Cooks, now that I said it, especially as late. But Cooks has been relatively healthy before these last 2 years. So
Right.
I think the biggest thing is that I would pick him up if Fuller gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect Fuller to get hurt before I expect Cooks to get hurt. But he's worth a look. It's just not a draft.
He's just more of a waiver wire kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
I think he's more of a guy to watch than do anything else.
I feel the same way.
Like for me, I'm not really looking to draft any of the Texans offensive players besides Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Like, probably once I start doing mock drafts, see where Cooks goes and stuff like that, and David Johnson. But, like, I don't know. I usually got to watch the team play an offense for me to get a feel of how I want them on my team. But right now, they don't really have any excitement in me right now.
Right.
How do you feel about David Johnson, Caden?
I mean, honestly, I think it's an upgrade from Carlos Hyde. That's my opinion. And I don't know. I don't remember exactly how much Deshaun Watson liked to check down to the running back as much. So I don't really see the receiving yards being as high personally, but
He likes to do it a lot, but
Does
he
it?
usually puts in Duke Johnson for that, and he was really good last year.
yeah. See, that's weird. Is David Johnson gonna get that, or Duke Johnson gonna get that? That's the thing.
The biggest thing was that the checkdowns were a popular thing for him to do, but especially towards the end of last year, he chose tight ends over for checkdowns.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how Darren Fells got 8
Yep.
touchdowns. That's
Exactly.
how Jordan Atkins got volume as well, even though being a backup tight end on who's typically one of the worst tight end passing offenses in the league a few years beforehand. I agree. I'm worried for David Johnson, especially in those receiving numbers.
He's in a weird spot right now.
Overall, I think we can confidently say the Brandin Cooks trade is a confusing trade, to say the least.
Yeah,
Definitely.
You gotta let it play out. In order
It might just be the time of year. We're still not even at the draft yet. We still don't even know, what the Texans and the Rams are going to do with this trade. The aftermath, the pick, the needs that this team needs on drafting. Is the Rams, are they going to take a wide receiver now to fill that void? Are they even looking at offense at all? What are the Texans going to do? It's so confusing early on, but I think it's very clear to see who the winners and losers are from a fantasy perspective, at least from player-wise. We didn't talk about players like Kenny Stills or Deshaun Watson, but I think we can all agree it helps the fact that this field is opened up from them.
Definitely.
However, I think it hurts Will Fuller because he's not that number one guy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously we kind of hit on it, but we're really going to hit on it now, is that this really, really hurts Jared Goff.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was a guy that he wasn't able to fully utilize last year. But this is a guy he totally used and totally exploited the year before.
Yeah.
It's hard because he's coming off what we consider a down year with over 4,500 passing yards. And now he's coming in without Brandin Cooks. And how is he going to react without Todd Gurley, without Brandin Cooks? I think we've pointed out the key points that we wanted to say. And I think this is mostly a situation to monitor these players, whether they go up or down on the draft boards. It's still early on. Like I said, Brandin Cooks isn't going to be a 13th round pick come August. But if you could get him in that 7th, that 6th round range, maybe he's worth that dart throw. Maybe you think it's not because of the health issues.
Yep.
But it has to be noted, if he does not go up, that is such an important guy to draft.
They're also in a really probably the toughest division in the league too, which is really gonna.
The Texans or the Rams?
Rams, I think.
I agree. I think especially Goff having to face Seattle twice, having to face that amazing
twice,
49ers defense twice.
Just avoid them. Don't even draft them.
It's scary.
I am not drafting Jared Goff.
When you have to go against defenses like that, it's just not even worth it, man.
I know.
It's rough.
Not even a stream. Screw that, dude.
Maybe one stream.
I know that when the Rams.
I think they have a Bengals game. Maybe
okay, all right. Bengals go.
Maybe one stream.
Dolphins, if they're lucky, I don't know if they play.
I remember the Rams defense used to be a good stream for defense. I would not even pick them because they're going to be on the field a bunch more now. The offense is going to struggle.
I agree. I think from a fantasy perspective, most Rams, at least in general, got a downgrade. All right. That's our hot take on Brandin Cooks and the trade. If you like what we said, if you think it was great, hit a like. Click the bell, subscribe, get notified, get it all up. We have a Twitter, FFG Podcast. We have an Instagram, FFG Podcast. Please, guys, support means the world. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day. Fantasy gods are